The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're gonna love it.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Oh my gosh. It feels like it's been forever since we've had you on. And I've been meaning to tell you this, but you are still the #1 ranked guest appearance on the Deep Shallow Dives. Listen, everybody, she is back. 17-year decorated Army veteran Josephine Guilbeau is back. And all right, let's get serious. We got a lot to talk about. I want to start off by really, I guess I just want to get your thoughts on, President Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel, Iran, what's going on? What do you think is happening?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the American people were really shocked to see the level of frustration that our President Trump has reached with what's going on between Israel and Iran. And of course, this is just a sentiment that we have all been expressing now for 20 months, a level of serious frustration, concern, sadness in what we have been witnessing happening in Gaza. And now he's starting to finally understand what we've all been trying to say, which is that the state of Israel is become rogue and they don't have any concern or regard for what the United States is saying, and they are trying to drag us into a war with Iran. This is something that they have been trying to do for decades now. The playbook that we're witnessing happening with Iran is, I call it a rinse and repeat. It is the same playbook that they used to get us to invade Iraq. So many people now have seen the video clip of war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu testifying in court, testifying in front of Congress, saying that he was sure that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and that we needed to invade.
No question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately.
And that ultimately is something that led us to invade Iraq, where over 4,000 American troops died, not to mention the amount that has died in Afghanistan, not to mention the 22 veteran suicides a day, and those who are suffering PTSD and everything that comes with that, domestic violence, families being split apart. What we're witnessing right now is the same playbook. This time, though, we have social media, and so we can get that word out and educate people that this is exactly what he did before in dragging American troops into war. And I think because people are becoming aware of that, it's putting pressure on the Trump administration to say, we cannot go to war with Iran. We cannot have troops going to the Middle East. We cannot have these forever wars. These are things he said during his campaign. And a lot of the MAGA constituents are looking to him now to say, were you lying to us? Were these campaign promises lied? After he violated international laws to bomb these nuclear sites in Iran, a lot of the constituents are wondering, how far are you willing to allow Israel to drag us into yet another war?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think you brought up a lot of good points. First of all, whether it's Candace Owens or Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson or so many people. I saw D.L. Hughley the other day posted it. So many people are posting the clips that go back to all the way to 1996 with Benjamin Netanyahu, and then his appearance at Congress in 2002, where he basically was crying wolf again about Saddam absolutely having weapons of mass destruction. And we all know how that turned out, So I think people, because of social media, like you said, people are like, wait a minute, this guy has been parroting the same set of rhetoric and the same set of, quite frankly, lies from 1996 to 2002 to 2005 to 2012 and so on and so forth. And I think people are really calling it out. And then with President Trump, it's been interesting when he bombed the 3 nuclear sites. It's like you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. I mean, it seemed like Saturday we were going to war. Sunday, everything was cool. Monday, we were going to war. Tuesday, everything was cool. And then who knows what's next. next, but there's a lot of, just a lot of X factors. Let me ask you this, in terms of, are you in touch with a lot of people, I guess, either that are currently serving or ex-military? Where does the military that you're networked with net out on the relationship with Israel?
Well, it's interesting, that you asked that, because most of the conversations that I have been having with people who are still active duty or still working in the Department of Defense as contractors, for example, have really been shocked to see how long we have supported Israel to this point, especially considering the amount of evidence that has come forward, including back in January when the ICJ issued, that this was plausible genocide, and that didn't deter our politicians. But I think what happened really put a lot of not only active duty military on alert, but also family members. And I have been getting messages, dozens and dozens of messages by both active duty members and family members asking, what can we do to try and ensure that we don't get deployed? We don't want to die for Israel. This is the overwhelming amount of, rhetoric that I'm hearing right now, because the reality is that American citizens understand that Israel is dragging us into another war, and they don't want to die for Israel. They don't want American troops on the ground for Israel again. And so I've been trying to push out a lot of content and create content that is centered around informing, about the GI rights hotline, and informing family members to contact your loved one's chain of command, because they don't have to do this. They don't have to deploy. They don't have to agree to deploy. There is a way that they can say, I don't agree with this and I don't want to participate in this. So I've been trying to really focus on that angle to educate people what they can do so that they don't die for Israel.
Yeah, I think that's really gotten apparent. And, it's interesting. AI right now, these artificial intelligence videos, primarily through what Google launched in this new Google VEO or Google VO, they call it, there's all kinds of videos that are basically being created that they're hilarious, first of all, but they're also so on point.
Reality.
And yeah, they're the reality of, hey, I don't want to die for Israel. I'm not going to die for Israel. So I think that's set in. And yeah, I think, I don't think even President Trump's administration was expecting this much backlash when this all happened with the bombing. And I will say
Absolutely.
I've seen a complete fracturing in really the Republican Party and the MAGA side, even among
Absolutely.
the big influencers and guys like Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Steve Bannon. These are guys that are like steadfast President Trump, supporters that have really gone on the anti-war and really have been against the things he's doing. I'll tell you, the most surprising to me, which I definitely did not have on my bingo card, was Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor
Right.
Greene, who was like the
And
queen
Thomas
of MAGA.
Massey.
Thomas Massey's always been that way. I think Thomas Massey's always been that way. And actually, he just went on Theo Vaughn's podcast and they had a really interesting conversation, basically talking about exactly what, you had just said a few minutes ago. And why I'm not going to die for Israel. Why am I fighting for Israel? But Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, these are two like super, MAGA Trump people. And
Yep.
it's been
That's the
interesting what they've.
reality. That's the horseshoe effect, where I believe something that I've recently learned about is the horseshoe effect, where people on the left and people on the right, ultimately do end up agreeing about a lot of things. And I'm really hoping that what's going on right now and the reality of Israel pulling us yet into another war in the Middle East is really going to be what unites people on the left and people on the right to say, our communities, our country has suffered enough. Not only are we still suffering inside of America, where we're living paycheck to paycheck, working, 2 jobs, 3 jobs to support our families, but we also are now facing the reality that our children are going to get sent to war again for Israel. And so I'm really
Yeah.
hoping that this could be the red line where our country unites, because I do believe that the pressure that's coming out from the Republican base, from a lot of people that are my family and friends, who are saying we do not want to go to another war, especially for Israel, that this type of pressure is what's going to change the minds of our corrupt politicians.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene and Don Lemon saying the same thing. And then I'll tell you something interesting. This is also bringing to light all the warmongers, and it's bringing to light all the people that, quite frankly, seem to salivate at the concept of war. And that's Lindsey Graham and Democratic spokesperson Van Jones. You know, that guy, Lindsey Graham and Van Jones uniting on one side. It just shows you that, these are people whose livelihood is built on
The
war
military
and
industrial
the
complex.
military industrial complex. Absolutely. I love that that's got so out in the open. Okay. What do you think's next? I mean, I know it's so hard to predict, but do you think we're heading to, calmer grounds and calmer minds, or do you think this could escalate again? And then second question, actually, why don't you answer that first? What do you think is next?
I anticipate that we're going to continue to see an escalated amount of violence happening in the Middle East. A report just came out accusing the GHF, that's the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, of crimes against humanity. I believe that as long as this genocide in Palestine continues, we are going to continue to see an escalation of violence in the Middle East, because the Houthis in Yemen are not going to stop. The Iranians are not going to stop. And now I just saw that the IDF is positioning defensive troops along the border in the West Bank with Jordan, because they're anticipating that Jordanian militia or Houthi militia are going to actually invade the land of Israel. And so we're watching that things are continuing to escalate, because at some point, this is what's going to happen when you're committing a genocide against people. You have to expect that people are going to become desperate enough to invade your land. And so we're watching the IDF deploying troops along the border of what they call Judea and Samaria, but which is in the West Bank, to try and protect their sovereignty. But this isn't going to be over until the genocide in Palestine stops, and then these war criminals are prosecuted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you, my biggest fear right now is a major false flag. Like, I could totally see, the Israelis basically creating some type of major false flag. And for those that don't know what a false flag is, honestly, think of 9/11. That to me was a major false flag that enabled a 20-year forever war. And, we can say that now with hindsight. So my fear right now is a major false flag on United States soil. I don't even think if it happened, and if they bombed a naval base in Qatar or Syria, I think everybody already expects that. But a major false flag on United States soil that they pin on a bunch of either Muslims or Iranians, maybe they pin it on a bunch of Iranians, and next thing you know, you find a passport that, in the rubble, just like 9/11. It's like the buildings fall down, there's unbelievable damage, but they found, Muhammad Atta's passport in perfect condition. I could see something like that happening. But you know what? The good thing is? The good thing is, man, social media is the equalizer. It really is the
Absolutely. The
equalizer.
amount of content that's coming out from both influencers who are on the left, on the right, about the reality of a false flag really does deter them from being able to do that and actually, get away with it. You look at what happened to those two diplomats, Israeli diplomats, that were allegedly killed outside of the Holocaust Museum, and that stayed in the news for maybe 24 to 48 hours, because the reality is that the American people even questioned that. They even questioned the truth behind if that truly was someone from the Palestinian movement, or was that some sort of staged false flag to try and get American people to support Israel more. But people are so hesitant to believe what Israel is saying now, that anything that they were to do like that, I don't think they're going to get the amount of support that they would have had we not have social media to be able to continue to educate everyone in America of the reality of what's going on.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's switch gears because I do want to talk about your recent attempt. Well, it was your recent trip, but your recent attempt to march to Gaza and really everything that you encountered in Egypt. So start off by sharing with
Wow.
everybody, because honestly, I don't think a lot of people even knew what this was, but this was an event called March to Freedom to Gaza, something like that.
It was called, okay, so there was sort of in coordination with the Freedom Flotilla that, as we all saw, was, they kidnapped the 12 members that were
Yeah.
they were trying to break the siege and get a formula to the starving people in Gaza. This was sort of in coordination with them that by land, sea, we're going to try and get to these people who are who Israel is forced starving to death. So the Global March to Gaza was something that myself and a group of veterans decided to participate in. We felt like our presence there would bring some sense of safety, because the reality is, if Israel were to retaliate against a group of people marching to Gaza that had American veterans inside, and any of us were to get hurt, this would be a really big reality check for America, knowing that Israel would have killed American veterans that were trying to march to save people starving. So we felt like our presence was going to be necessary to show that, this is people from all walks of life, all backgrounds of life, coming together as global citizens to say, we are against the forced starvation of children. We are against the unrelentless bombing of civilians by Israel. We want to break the siege. So everything that we had organized leading up to this, we were negotiating with the Egyptian authorities. The organizers were planning everything, all the steps with the Egyptian authorities, and we thought we were going to have a permit to be able to go. But when we got there, we started noticing that they were detaining people who were flying in for the Global March to Gaza from Arab countries. And this
is in where? Cairo in
this
Egypt?
is once we're in Cairo, yes. So I went a
And
day
just so
early.
everyone doesn't know, a lot of people probably don't. So Egypt is attached to Israel and basically kind of borders the bottom right to left, and basically is also attached to Gaza.
Yes. I had arrived a day early into Cairo to sort of be able to get, our room and board, everything settled, and then receive the veterans. I wanted to be sort of like the recon element to make sure everything was safe before all of the veterans started flying in. And so we flew in. And once I was in country inside of Cairo, I started noticing that the Egyptian government was detaining a lot of people who were from Arab countries or had Arab names. And this sort of set off a red flag for me. And I started wondering if they were doing this because they had some sort of false intel that there would be people trying to infiltrate our march. And so they were just responding to that intel that more than likely would have come from Israel, because of course they want to ruin any opportunity that we have to be able to break their siege. And so I'm noticing that they're detaining and deporting a lot of people with Arab names, Arab countries. And that's when things really started to go south there. And the negotiations were continuing with the Egyptian authority. And we were assuming that, up until this point, we would still, at least a group of people would be able to march. Maybe not all of us, but at this point, we were assuming that, at least some of us would be able to go. And then all of a sudden, it was like things went really south. We started hearing that the Egyptian government was publishing on their state media to their civilians that we were there to cause instability and insecurity to their country. They were accusing us of being Israeli spies. We were infiltrating on behalf of Israel to try and to destabilize their government. And so the Egyptian people started expressing concern for us being there and wanting us to leave.
And by the way,
so,
how many people are we talking? Are we talking like
I think
100 or like 1,000?
Oh no, it was probably close to 2,000.
Wow. Okay.
Just from France, 500 people had went, and I believe we were like 460 from America.
Okay, and this is
But
made
there
up
were
of
people from like 52
veterans.
countries.
There were veterans there. I know a lot of medical
Oh yeah.
doctors were there because I saw a
Doctors,
lot of their
veterans,
okay.
anti-war organizations.
Okay.
Everyone that's been a part of trying to stop this genocide basically sent a contingency of people to go.
Okay.
So yeah, well, we were checking out of our Airbnb and we were en route to the first location where we were all going to meet each other. We weren't going to march to Gaza yet, but this was just a location that we can all come together and meet each other. And as soon as the first group of veterans left our Airbnb to get inside of an Uber ride, a police officer ran to the Uber ride, took the phone from the Uber driver and ran back to his police car to call in the address of where we were headed. And the veterans walked away. They didn't really understand what was going on, so they walked away. 2 police officers followed those veterans. From that moment, it was terrifying. We didn't know what was going to happen at this point. From that moment, we were followed or police were called on us everywhere we went. We went to our next Airbnb and the security guard of the building called the police on us. And like it was like they really did not want us there and they were going to try everything they could to get us out. Our biggest concern wasn't necessarily the Egyptian authority themselves. It was the fact that there were reports that they had paid Egyptian civilians to attack people that were going through a checkpoint in order to get to the location that we were all going to. And so that's why you saw hundreds and hundreds of people who were there to march to Gaza all huddled at a checkpoint getting attacked by Egyptian civilians. These people were hired.
Like physically attacked?
Physically attacked, yes. They were physically attacking them, yes, at the checkpoint.
God.
The Egyptian authorities were standing right there. So at this point,
the Egyptian authorities let the Egyptian civilians attack these people?
Yes.
And I mean, are we talking like punching or
yes,
were there
punching,
weapons? And my
pulling,
God.
they had big sticks that they were hitting people with sticks, punching them. Yes. These are all videos that came out. Yes. At this point, the veterans had moved to another location because the cops were already following us. So we didn't want to go to this site anymore because we didn't feel like it was safe. So we went to a restaurant to try and just like calm down and figure out what are we going to do next. And while we were there is when everyone started getting attacked at this checkpoint. And so we knew at that point that more than likely we were not going to be going on this march to Gaza and that we needed to exit Cairo as soon as possible. Because at that point they arrested the organizer, one of the main organizers, beat him, had him arrested for like 3 days in prison or in jail and then detained him.
God, that's insane. What about, did they take your passports at all? Like, did they take anyone's
passport? Not ours. They did take the group that made it to the checkpoint and that was detained at the checkpoint. They did take their passports and put them on buses.
My goodness. That is crazy.
It was a pretty terrifying situation.
That is terrifying. And like, I can only imagine, I mean, you're an Army veteran, so you've seen some things and you're a little tougher than the normal person. But man, I can only imagine the peace-loving person that was there trying to like save humanity. That must have been terrifying. So when you left the airport, did they basically, it's almost like they tracked you until you left maybe?
Yes,
wow.
They wanted us out of Egypt because, the United States of America pays the Egyptian government a lot of money to remain neutral on the situation with Palestine and Israel. And so
I think it's roughly $2 billion a year. And believe it or not, Egypt is the second largest, country that's on allowance, I like to call it. Israel's number 1, then Egypt, then Jordan, and then Syria. So ironically, all the countries in the Middle East that surround Israel, they get a nice $1 to $2 billion yearly allowance to basically, not do anything.
Yeah, and so us being there was really, going against that neutrality. Them allowing us to be there was going against the neutrality that the United States and Israel expects of them. And so that's why I think that they were coming down so hard to get us out. I don't think that they realized how many people were actually going to be participating in this march because we, as people across the world, have become so desperate to try and stop what we have been witnessing for 20 months that we are willing to go by land, sea, or air to get to these
Yeah.
people to save their lives. And that's the level of desperation that the world is at right now. And there's only so much that these countries can do and so much money that they can have to be able to keep people out from wanting to save Gaza. Right. And so although this happened, now we're looking at a large portion of the group ended up going to Tunisia, and they're talking about maybe traveling from Tunisia to come back to march to Gaza. Like, this isn't over, and it won't be over until the genocide ends in Gaza.
Wow. And last thing on this, when you guys were going to march to Gaza, are you talking about literally like on your feet, you're walking from Cairo into Gaza? Like, how long of a trek was that supposed to be?
Yeah, actually, we were going to bus up until the last city that is closest to Rafah. It's, I
Okay.
think, roughly 8 hours from Cairo. We were going to bus there. And from there, yeah, we were going to march 8 miles a day or 10 miles a day. I think it's roughly 30 miles to Rafah. They were going to provide tents and provisionaries, food, etc. for this march. Once we got to Rafah, we were going to camp there for 3 days. If the authorities were going to allow us in, we were going to go inside Rafah. We were going to actually deliver all of the tents and food and aid that we had to them, stay there for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then exit. That was the plan, and be bused back to Cairo.
So what happened to all that food and aid and all the supplies that were going to get delivered to the Palestinian people?
I have no idea, but there are so
My
many
gosh.
humanitarian organizations on the ground in Cairo trying to fill up trucks every day. Of course, there's a blockade now, but there still are trucks that line up every day outside of Rafah waiting to get in, just in the case that Israel will allow aid into Gaza. And so I have no
Wow.
doubt that they definitely donated that to some of these aid organizations.
Okay. Well, hopefully it made its way to the Palestinian people. All right, listen, I know you're not feeling great, so I'm going to let you go today, but it's great to see you. And again, I just want to tell you how impactful the things you've been doing every time you post. And I know you're highly shadow banned and censored, especially on Instagram. But I have to tell you, when you post, it's always with such emotion, and that is coming through because I do read the comments under your posts and what people write, and you are really touching people's soul. And I just wanted to tell you, even though I know it's so frustrating being so shadow banned and having Meta basically try to silence you, it's not working because your message is getting through. And I read the emotion in what people are writing and their appreciation to all you're doing. So anyway, all right. Listen, everybody,
Thank you
she's
for
not
having
feeling
me.
100% today, so we're not going to keep her. I literally have like 3 more sections to go through, but you know what? We'll do it in an upcoming episode. Josephine Guilbeau, thank you so much. Feel better. And
Thank you.
we are all going to try to do like you do, and that is call a spade a spade.
That's
All right,
right.
hang on the line.
We definitely cannot give up, no matter how much theatrics are going on by our leadership. One thing I always say is that we, the people, whether here in America or across the world, we have more power than these leaders, and we cannot give up trying to educate and wake up every last person to the reality of what's happening, because we can live in a peaceful world, but we just have to work towards achieving that vision.
Absolutely. All right, hang on the line. All right, everybody, we'll talk to you soon.
This episode was brought to you by the new book Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.